Let's find out right now what's going on in Washington, D.C. Our great friend that we talk to every Tuesday at this time. There he is, inside the Beltway, the Real Clear Politics reporter and correspondent for the White House, Philip Wegmann. Philip, happy New Hampshire primary to you.
Happy primary day. Thanks for having me, Pat.
So, in fact, now, are you in New Hampshire or are you in D.C.?
I am in New Hampshire.
Okay.
It's colder up here, but this is, in all likelihood, the last dance, a true do-or-die situation for the former ambassador. If she is going to blunt Donald Trump's march and his rise to the nomination, she's got to do it in New Hampshire, which is, as suburban as Iowa was rural. This is fertile ground for a challenge. And the thought is, if she can pull off an upset here, then she can turn this into a real race. Otherwise, it's looking more and more like a roll.
Well, and let's look at this real quick, Philip. Here's my understanding of the breakdown. If you are already assigned to a party, that's the primary you have to vote in. If you're not, then you could go in there and select. If you're brand new and you're just voting for the first time, you can select that whole bit. And the numbers I saw, tell me if you think I'm way off here. It's like 30% Republicans, 31% Democrat. They're in New Hampshire as far as their registrations. And so then that means the balance of the state, which would be, about another 39%, are all independents. Now, would she get all the independents? No. But odds are, if she's going to make a mark with anybody, it would be in the independent vote. I think it'll be very interesting to see how that independent plays out. Now, he's not going to get all the Republicans either, but he's going to get the lion's share. But if he gets 60 or 65% of the Republicans, that still throws a few to her column. And then if she starts, stacking on some independents on top of that, it might be closer than we think.
That's right. And so the hope here for Haley is that she can drive that independent vote, that she can get as many independent voters or dissatisfied Democratic voters to turn out for her. A big dynamic in this race right now is that Joe Biden is not playing in New Hampshire. Generally, they have the Republican and Democratic primaries at the same time, but because the president moved the first-in-the-nation primary for Democrats to South Carolina, which was more favorable territory for him, there are a lot of Democrats up here who are saying, there's no contest, so I might as well, rather than throwing my vote away, I might as well go play on the Republican side and see what happens.
Yeah,
Another thing to note here, though.
Well, the independents could do that, but you said, if she had some disenfranchised Democrats, they can't cross over in the primaries, can they? Because as soon as they walk in, when the worker pulls up their name, their address, and all that, it's going to pop up Democrat. That's the only option they've got.
No, that's right. If they are registered Democrat before they go into the polls, there's a table on the outside of every polling place where you can register right after you vote, and you can change your registration to Independent, Democratic, or Republican right after you vote. So, for instance, if someone voted in the Republican primary last time, they are a registered Republican. If they voted in the Democratic primary, they're a registered Democrat. But what they can do right after they cast their ballot is they can then register again for next year, for the next contest, as an independent. And that is one of the unique quirks of New Hampshire, where they really do put a premium on being independent, on being unaligned. And so you're right about the dynamic going in, but there are a lot of folks up here who, say, oh, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican, but, they are registered as an independent because they, switched the registration at the end of the last election. It's a strange quirk, but it could be one that has big consequences for Nikki Haley. And I just want to preempt, I think a gripe that I'm hearing more and more from President Trump and his campaign. They have complained that Haley is appealing to independents. Well, in 2016, Donald Trump won this state
Yep.
in large part
Yep.
by appealing to first-time voters and independents.
Yep.
So there's a bit of hypocrisy there.
Yeah, there is. I get why they're doing it. It's we've got to put the nail in her coffin, and we need to do it right here. They really can't afford for her to be able to get much more headway as they're going forward. When you talk now, you've been in New Hampshire since when?
I flew in on Friday.
Okay.
And I got here Saturday morning at 3 a.m.
Yay! What I tell you, I so envy you and your position and all the great travel you get to do. That's a lie, okay? Just so you understand that. So you're there and you're on the ground. You go on Friday. You're in place on Saturday. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday, now Tuesday, in your fourth real day in New Hampshire. What's your gut check? I mean, Donald does own the Republican vote, right?
That's right. Trump is this unique character, and we've talked about this before, where he is the establishment. And you can say, no, he's the candidate who wanted to drain the swamp. He is the candidate who is at war with Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. And that's true. But for the most part, the Republican establishment has lined up behind him. Guys like Senator Tim Scott, who is the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, the South Carolina governor, Henry McMaster, not exactly a limited government type. A number of Republicans from across the spectrum have lined up against him because he's the most powerful Republican that there is. And yet at the same time, even as he enjoys the advantages of almost incumbency, as he runs as a former president, he's also able to be the leader of this massive grassroots movement. People are excited to, come to his rallies because they don't know what they're going to get. They don't know what they're going to see. There's definitely a curiosity factor there. And so Trump has the best of both worlds. He has political muscle, and then he also has grassroots support. And Nikki Haley, her team, when I talked to Governor Chris Sununu, the New Hampshire governor who's stumping for her, he was telling me, she can win in New Hampshire. This is going to be a reset. And in the last couple of days, they have changed their tune to start saying that they expect a strong second. So I'm not saying that an upset is out of the question here, but it does seem improbable.
Do you think if she is a very close second, define for me, first of all, you would consider a close second to be what, 5 percentage points, 10 percentage points?
Yeah, it's got to be within 5 percentage points. What the Trump campaign wants is they want something over 50%, because if they get 50% of the vote here, they say, all right, it's done.
Yeah.
There's no other game in town. It's time to unify.
Yeah. Yeah. If they do two pre-election activities, a caucus and a primary, and we're over 50% in each, come on, folks, let's come together here. Let's get this over with.
That's right. Now, Haley has been making the rounds today, and I found it really interesting that she scheduled a stop in South Carolina tomorrow. But Haley has been making the rounds and arguing that she's in this for the long haul, that a number of states that are going to be voting on Super Tuesday, they also have open primaries where she can appeal to independents, where she can convince folks to register Republican. But, that seems like a pipe dream if she gets blown out of the water by 10, 15%, as Governor Chris Christie predicted.
Yeah. When I listened to all this, I wasn't surprised that Vivek Ramaswamy, when he dropped out of the race, that he instantly threw his weight behind Donald Trump. Were you a little surprised that when it happened that the governor of Florida, when DeSantis jumped out, he also immediately threw his support behind Donald Trump? Did that surprise you at all?
I was not surprised by the DeSantis move, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
There is great animosity within the DeSantis campaign and orbit over Nikki Haley. They don't think that she has a realistic shot. Their expectation is that she is going to lose in New Hampshire, that she's not going to be able to carry her home state of South Carolina, and that this appeal to moderates and independents is just not going to work when you're running against Donald Trump. And so, they didn't have a problem with, challenging her in Iowa. What they are frustrated by and resentful for is the fact that she spent $26 million in Iowa, much of it in ads and campaign efforts to tear down the Florida governor rather than to go after Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, that's what DeSantis was also doing. He trained his fire on Haley. He was trying to turn this into a two-person race. There's no love lost between the two of them in terms of just strategy, and then also in terms of the fact that Ron DeSantis very much more of a conservative, sort of MAGA-friendly Republican, whereas Nikki Haley, she represents more of a neoconservative old guard.
Yeah, she's kind of the soft, I'm kind of a conservative center of the Republican Party, and DeSantis is standing right there solidly in the gap. It's one of the reasons that Donald Trump endorsed him for governor of Florida, and it's one of the reasons that Trump said a couple of years ago that he wanted to live down there at Mar-a-Lago was because of the government and the administration of Ron DeSantis.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I was surprised by were all of the efforts from Trump folks to unify with DeSantis so quickly and brush all of the nasty campaigning underneath the rug. We saw President Trump, he no longer called the Florida governor DeSanctus. He called him DeSantis for the first time in over a year and, welcomed him with open arms back into the fold. You had Donald Trump Jr. making the rounds in New Hampshire saying that, we're very grateful that DeSantis had endorsed his father. But that reminded me of a moment from former Vice President Harris's time when she joined the ticket with President Biden. She was asked by Stephen Colbert about some of her attacks on Biden, where she called him a racist, and her response was, "Oh, it's politics. It's politics. It was a campaign," and she just sort of brushed it off as if you can say anything during a campaign.
Yeah.
And some of the attacks against DeSantis, not from Trump himself, but from people in his orbit. From the former president. The former president brought up the fact that, DeSantis taught at a, private school, and he shared a picture of DeSantis with some younger high school students and made some pretty disgusting accusations. And then also some people in his orbit who he's decided to surround himself with, Roger Stone, Laura Loomer. They've said things that would get you an FEC fine if I repeated them on air. So, I do find all the talk about unity a little bit cheap. They either meant it when they were attacking him or they didn't.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Let me just ask you real quick. You've been down there now about 4 days. Where has your activity been? Have you visibly been where Trump has been? Have you visibly been where Nikki Haley has been? Have you been able to sit in on live events for both of them?
I have been. And there's a difference in their tactics, which I think is very interesting. Donald Trump is sticking with his tried and true method of the mega rally, and he has not lost any zip on his fastball. He does repeat some of the same jokes and tell some of the same stories, but he's able to fill these coliseums and stadiums. And, he comes in and does the show. Whereas Nikki Haley, she and Chris Sununu, they've been doing more one-on-one things with voters. They've been going to, lobster pounds and VFW halls. And they've also, they've had some big rallies, but theirs is much more in person. And we'll see if New Hampshire still puts a premium on that, or if we've gotten to a sort of a mass media moment where it's true. All you need to do is, have a big rally, do a couple Fox News interviews, and call it a day. With Nikki Haley, my bias here is towards more access and more transparency. The old school approach that she's doing has lent itself to, an opportunity for reporters like myself to ask her questions and, to push her on different issues. And I've been able to pepper her with a few questions over the last few days.
Yeah. Well, listen, you head home when? Tomorrow?
Sometime tomorrow, if I can get out of New Hampshire's Manchester Airport. I don't know if I'm going to get snowed in or not.
Rent a car and drive to the next state. I'm just telling you. I was in evangelism just long enough that I'll tell you, getting out of New Hampshire on a good day is not the easiest thing in the world. But as long as you're on, the dime, for your organization, just another night at the Hilton. What's that? That's nothing. So,
I'll tell him that you recommended that.
No habla inglés. Hey, listen, Philip, I appreciate it very much, my good friend. We'll talk soon. Now, next week we'll be back, and I'll be back. Tuesday will be my first day back next week. Kim and I are going to a gospel inspiration event in Memphis, in Nashville, and so we'll get back Monday, and I'll be back on the air Tuesday. So you'll be on my first day back. I expect good reports from you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, we'll talk to you then. Philip Wegmann from Real Clear Politics. He is their White House correspondent.
Podcasts by Federated Media.